It's about 4.5 billion years ago, and Earth is a molten ball of nothing you'd want to touch. No oceans yet, no air you could breathe, just heat, chaos, and heavy metal raining down from space. And somewhere in that mess, gold starts sinking. Straight down, through the crust, through the mantle, all the way to the core, where almost every scrap of it should have stayed forever. Locked away, buried under thousands of miles of rock, completely and permanently out of reach. So here's the question nobody really stops to ask. If nearly all the gold on Earth sank to the core before humans, before animals, before even the first cell divided, why is any of it sitting in your ring right now? The answer involves asteroids, dying stars, a metal that refuses to rot, and a psychological trick baked so deep into the human brain that we built entire civilizations, currencies, and wars around a shiny yellow rock that, if you're being honest, doesn't actually do very much. Let's start with the part that should genuinely blow your mind. Gold isn't from here, not originally. Gold, along with platinum and a handful of other heavy metals, is created almost exclusively in some of the most violent events in the universe, colliding and neutron stars. Stars so dense a teaspoon of their material would weigh billions of tons, smashing into each other at a significant fraction of the speed of light, releasing a firestorm of energy that fuses atoms into gold and blasts it out into space. That gold drifted through the galaxy for billions of years before some of it got swept up into the swirling cloud of dust that eventually became our solar system. Which means, and this is the part worth sitting with, the gold on your finger, the gold in your phone, the gold sitting in a vault somewhere in Switzerland is older than the sun, older than Earth itself. You are wearing jewelry made from an exploded star, but almost none of that gold should still be near the surface. When Earth was young and still molten, heavy elements did what heavy elements do. They sank, iron sank, gold sank. Almost the entire supply ended up fused into the core, thousands of miles beneath your feet, essentially unreachable for the rest of human history. So how did we get any at all? Here's where it gets interesting. Long after Earth had cooled and formed a solid crust, a second wave of material slammed into the planet. Asteroids. A relentless bombardment scientists call the Late Heavy Bombardment, roughly 4 billion years ago. Some of those asteroids were rich in gold and other precious metals, and because they hit after Earth's crust had already solidified, that gold never had the chance to sink to the core. It stayed near the surface, scattered through rock, waiting. Every single flake of gold ever mined by human beings came from that leftover asteroid debris, not from Earth's original formation. From cosmic leftovers that happened to arrive at exactly the wrong time to sink in exactly the right time, for us to eventually dig it up. Now fast forward, humans show up, and almost immediately something strange happens. We start treating this particular metal differently than basically every other substance on the planet. The earliest confirmed gold artifacts come from the Varna necropolis in modern-day Bulgaria, dating back roughly 6,500 years. Small gold ornaments buried with the dead, not for any practical function, not for cutting, not for building, not for eating, purely decorative, purely symbolic. Someone looked at this soft yellow metal and immediately decided it meant something. And here's the thing that makes gold different from almost every metal humans have ever found. It doesn't rust, it doesn't tarnish, it doesn't corrode, react, or degrade, even after thousands of years buried in dirt or lost at the bottom of the ocean. Gold pulled from ancient tombs still gleams exactly as bright as the day it was buried. In a world where everything decays, where wood rots and iron rusts and skin turns to dust, gold just sits there, unbothered, looking exactly the same forever. To ancient humans with no concept of chemistry, this must have looked like magic, a material that time itself couldn't touch, and something that defies decay, in nearly every culture on Earth, gets treated as sacred. Ancient Egyptians called gold the flesh of the gods. They believed the skin of their deities was literally made of it, which is why pharaohs were buried in gold, masks, and coffins, an attempt to make the dead ruler eternal, imperishable, godlike. Tutankhamun's death mask alone contains over 20 pounds of solid gold, shaped by hand more than 3,000 years ago, and it still looks flawless today. Across the ocean, in cultures that had zero contact with Egypt, the exact same instinct shows up. The Inca called gold the sweat of the sun, not a coincidence. Gold is one of the only metals on Earth that occurs naturally in a bright, sun-like yellow color. Every culture, independently looking at the same, untouchable, undying, radiant metal, arrived at the same conclusion. This isn't ordinary. This belongs to something bigger than us. But sacred symbolism alone doesn't explain why gold became money. That required something more practical, and this is where chemistry quietly takes over the story. For something to work as currency, it needs a very specific set of properties. It has to be scarce, so it can't be casually recreated. It has to be durable, so it doesn't degrade sitting in someone's pocket for decades. It has to be divisible, so you can split it into smaller amounts. And it has to be consistent, so an ounce of it is worth the same whether it's in Cairo or Beijing. Gold checks every single box almost perfectly. It's rare enough that you can't just stumble into infinite quantities of it. It never corrodes, so it holds value across generations. It melts at a manageable temperature, so it can be divided, reshaped, and standardized into coins, and chemically gold is nearly identical everywhere on the planet. An ounce mined in Peru is indistinguishable from an ounce mined in Australia. Compare that to something like salt, which was also once used as currency, hence the word salary. Salt works fine until it rains. Compare it to livestock, valuable, sure, but deeply impractical to carry around or split into exact change. Gold solved logistical problems that almost nothing else could. The first standardized gold coins appear around 600 BC in the Kingdom of Lydia, in modern-day Turkey. Before that, trade relied on bartering or unweighed chunks of metal, which meant constant disputes over purity and value. Lydian coins were stamped with a government seal guaranteeing weight and quality. Suddenly, gold wasn't just valuable, it was verifiably valuable. Trust, minted directly into metal. From there, it spread everywhere. Empires rose and fell, but gold coins kept moving between them, a currency that outlasted the governments that issued it. And that's the strange power of gold. It doesn't care who's in charge. It doesn't ask what language you speak or what god you pray to. It just keeps being gold. Here's where the story turns darker, because the same qualities that made gold precious also made it dangerous. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the Americas in the 1500s, they found civilizations, the Aztec and the Inca among them, with staggering quantities of gold, worked into art, religious objects, and royal ornaments. The Spanish didn't see sacred craftsmanship, they saw currency waiting to be melted down. Entire empires were looted, populations enslaved, and irreplaceable art destroyed, all in pursuit of a metal that, chemically speaking, does almost nothing useful. You can't eat gold, you can't build shelter from it. In its raw historical form, it barely serves any function beyond looking beautiful and refusing to decay, and yet it justified some of the most brutal chapters in human history. That's the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath this entire story. Gold's value was never really about the metal itself. It was about the story humans agreed to tell about it. Scarce, eternal, beautiful, and universally desired, a collective hallucination so convincing that millions of people were willing to kill, enslave, and die for it. Modern science eventually found practical uses too. Gold conducts electricity efficiently and never corrodes, which is why it lines the connectors inside your phone right now. It's used in dentistry, in medicine, even reflecting radiation on astronaut visors. But here's the twist. Those uses came thousands of years after gold was already considered priceless. We didn't value gold because it was useful. We found uses for it because we already valued it that much. So why is gold so valuable? Because a dying star exploded billions of years before Earth existed. Because an asteroid happened to slam into our planet at exactly the right geological moment. Because a soft yellow metal refuses to rot while everything else around it decays. And because humans, completely independently across oceans and centuries, looked at that same unbothered, undying shine and decided, without any instructions from anyone, that it meant something sacred. Every gold ring, every coin, every bar sitting in a vault is a tiny fragment of an exploded star that humans agreed, thousands of years ago, to treat as priceless. And we've never really stopped agreeing. Next time you see something gold, remember what you're actually looking at. Not just metal. Stardust that outlived a supernova, survived a planetary collision, and somehow ended up meaning something to a species that didn't exist yet when it was made.